Over the course of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, the character Captain Jack Sparrow experiences a considerable de-evolution that leaves his character, as it is in the most recent installments, essentially completely unrecognisable to the character as he was first introduced. In his original appearance in 2003's Curse of the Black Pearl, he is a cunning and wily character who uses his eccentricity to outsmart or confuse his enemies. Throughout the second, third, and fourth movies, his character shifts to be an opportunist who uses a combination of deception and sheer luck to win out, and whose idiosyncrasies often seem to be sincere rather than put on, but ultimately someone who always has a greater plan and can quickly adapt. However, by the time of the fifth installment, Dead Men Tell No Tales, he's kind of just a bumbling dickhead who exists as a comedic foil playing second fiddle to the film's straight-edge protagonists like Henry Turner and Karina Smith. Many different parties have fallen on blame for this phenomenon. I mean, you've got bad directing, bad writing, Disney, and Kathleen Kennedy, somehow. The Flanderization of Jack Sparrow is a phenomenon that has soured the reputation of the franchise as a whole and pushed its re-evaluation now almost 20 years in retrospect. However, I move here now that there is a way to reconcile Jack's character changes in a way that fits into the continuity of the greater universe. I would like to caveat this with two things. One, this is a topic that has been done to death on YouTube, and I will not be saying anything of note that hasn't already been said about it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's fun. Two, I am not a fan of the fifth film. I think that it's the weakest installment in the franchise and that it somewhat plays like one of those Disney live-action adaptations in terms of tone and overall visual aesthetic, except that it's not a remake of anything, it's its own movie, which doesn't help it. However, I am a massive apologist for the rest of the series, and the fifth film exists now, so we might as well make the best of it, right? My first argument: Jack is old. Now, we're never explicitly told Jack Sparrow's age in the series, but we do have some clues that can get us very close. The visual guide for Curse of the Black Pearl places the movie as taking place in 1728. We know that Jack made a deal with Davy Jones to raise the Black Pearl 13 years before Dead Man's Chest, meaning that he captained the ship as early as 1717. If Jack was at least in his early 20s when he became captain, that would place his birth as being around between 1690 and 1700. And we know that Dead Men Tell No Tales takes place between 1751 and 1752. That would place Jack as being between 60 and 65 years old at the time of the fifth film. Now, for a pirate, that's old, alright? He's lived an entire life battling disease, dehydration, other pirates, and endless amounts of alcohol all his life. Not only would this turn you into a bit of a relic physically, it also, I imagine, would take a toll on someone's mental state as well. On the disease point too, we do know that Jack has syphilis, and having it for going on 20 years since the start of the first movie or before, he's actually as lucky that he's as well put together even as he is. That does also bring me to my second argument: Jack is drunk. Now, I do think this is the weakest of the three arguments that I've come up with. Jack exists in essentially a perpetual state of intoxication throughout the entire series. However, I do think that the fifth movie really shows that it started to get the best of him. Don't you think that experiencing all the things that I just described earlier, rather than developing a tolerance to alcohol, it might eventually overcome you? Even if we compare the Smuggler's Den sequence in Curse of the Black Pearl, which is a time when we see Jack drunk in one of the three original movies, it's nothing compared to how we see him act in Saint Martin in the fifth movie, stumbling around and essentially resorting to slapstick jokes to convey how destroyed he is. And talking of destroyed, let's move on to my third argument. Jack is washed. In the third movie, at World's End, we learn that Jack is one of the 9 pirate lords. More specifically, he's the Pirate Lord of the Caribbean. In his capacity as Pirate Lord, he takes part in the Fourth Brethren Court, fighting in a war to preserve piracy from destruction at the hands of the East India Trading Company. Further, despite what Norrington says in the first movie, Jack is widely known for his exploits, particularly as they relate to the Black Pearl, and is infamous among the main villains of the franchise, all of whom he has tangled with in the past. Even in the fourth film, On Stranger Tides, which takes place 8 years after Curse of the Black Pearl, the pirate Blackbeard has his crew pose as Sparrow, attempting to hire crewmen for his ship in a bid to draw the real Sparrow out. This works, but news of the Jack Sparrow hiring crewmen becomes big news in London and also seemingly beyond. But in the fifth movie, he's got none of that. His crew is mostly composed of traditionalists and people who don't have anywhere else to go. He doesn't have a ship of note. Gibbs says that his luck has run out, and Barbossa calls him a washed-up drunk. Now, we know that this status isn't exclusive to pirates that grow old, right? Jack's father, Captain Teach, becomes a renowned veteran pirate with deep, almost religious importance. Barbossa seizes the power vacuum left after the death of Blackbeard to become seemingly one of the richest pirates ever, commanding his own fleet. And hell, even some of the pirate lords in the Fourth Brethren Court look pretty old, right? But by the time of the fifth movie, Jack doesn't even have that. He's not a pirate lord anymore. He doesn't have a piece of eight. I don't think it's too difficult to believe that rather than looking at Jack as a character who's been ruined by poor writing choices, we're looking at a character that's outlived his own legacy. He's not in his prime anymore. He's washed up. I'm going off script a little bit here now, but if that was an intentional choice rather than just poor understanding of the character, I think there's also a question to be made on whether that was the right decision. Do audiences want to see a realistic end to their character that doesn't have them end up like Barbossa, say, or Captain Teach, but rather as it has been? I don't know, and I think it's difficult to say how the franchise would have gone if they had gone another way other than this. Certainly the way that the fifth film has been presented to the general public shows that it probably wasn't the right decision, but I'm not really sure what is. So I just think that there has to be a way to look beyond what we see on the screen and try and examine it in the context of the greater story. It's a difficult situation that I think is reminiscent of other big kind of blockbuster franchises of the time, like Indiana Jones or Star Wars or that sort of thing. If you're a fan of the franchise, I think it's important to try and reconcile your differences that you have with the movie and examine it as part of the greater product.